and welcome to Marketing Mondays with Maria. I'm super happy to have the amazing Giovanni here today for the third episode of Marketing Mondays, and I cannot wait to talk to you about growth and experimentation. But before we dive in, could you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much. My name is Giovanni. I come from Italy. I live in Ferrara, that it is a small town near Bologna. It is famous for bicycle, as you can see from my background. I work in Milan. I'm a commuter. I work for Ungguess. Ungguess is a crowd testing platform. We test digital products. Before Ungguess, I worked for Backlogs, a tech company in B2B, and before Backlogs, for an agency. I've been a marketer. Marketing is my background. In Backlogs, I started to work for Magier, that it is a product. So I started my adventure in experimentation and growth. So validating a product, validating campaigns. It has been a challenge, but I liked it. I liked it a lot, and so I decided to move forward, being a growth marketer. And now in Unggas, I am the growth manager. So my focus is on experimentation. I would say that nearly the 100% of my time is on experimentation. So I had an experience, and I like this opportunity to share it because I think it's really important. Many talk about experimentation, but I think that we can go in deep about a couple of topics. And that's it.
Amazing. Yeah, you mentioned to me that you conducted like a lot of experiments at Unggas. Also in the past 6 months, you conducted 91 experiments, which I think those are insane numbers. I already told you. I have to say, like, as someone who has done like a few here and there, like a few A/B tests, and the numbers are not remotely close to those that you have done. So I'm really looking forward to learning how you track the experiments, what inspires you to run the experiments, how you stay organized with so many different experiments to run, and maybe you can tell me a bit more about this project. Like why so many experiments? I mean, I know it's your full-time role now, but still it's a huge number, I think.
Yeah, I know that this is insane, but I think it was necessary. Everything started from the really challenging goal that we had in the beginning of the year. And I said, okay, we have this challenging goal. We need to experiment. It's the only way to find the right growth levers, and the real game changer things we need to test. We need to test again and again and again, but we need to move faster. And so I started to split the work in sprints of 2 weeks each one. And I started with the first backlog of ideas. Of course, everything connected to these impactful goals that we had, because you can test, you can experiment a landing page or a campaign, but if you don't create impact, it's difficult to prove your work, and it is also difficult to manage it, I think. So I started from this assumption, and I said, okay, I need also something really concrete to manage my work, and I created this first Google Sheet to manage this experimentation. It was very easy at the beginning. Now, probably it's more complex. We had, in that moment in Unggas, ClickUp as a project management tool. So, of course, I connected the Google Sheet to ClickUp. But we could say that the core of the project, we could say, was and is in Google Sheet. And for this first 6 months in Unggas, we ran a 91 experiment that I continuously say to you and to myself, to the people that will listen us. And it is insane, but it was necessary again, because every sprint start with the first meeting. Try to understand, okay, we have this backlog, we have this North Star, we have this OKR and these goals. And we try to prioritize these experiments, because this was necessary. This was the great goal of the framework that I created. Because we had, since the beginning, I have to say, a very deep backlog. And so at the end of the first week and in the beginning of the first week, of course, 2 meetings of checkup of the current experiment. And in the beginning of the next sprint, again, the first meeting with the checkup of the old experiment, trying to understand if they were successful or not. But before of being successful or not, for me, it was important that they were statistically valid. Because if an experiment it is not statistically valid, it doesn't have sense, I think. And it was not easy. This framework was very helpful because I created different columns trying to cluster the experiment. Of course, for the type of experiment itself, if it was focused on activation, on acquisition, or revenue, or retention, or referral, the classic funnel, we could say. But I think that this tag could be right also for the loop, that it is a great trend that we hear every day now. Thanks to the mentors I had, every time I try to enrich this framework, and I inserted this column that I think it's very important for me, and I want to thank Jason Barbato, that was the person that taught me about this. And it is the type of experiment that it was necessary to manage all these 91 experiments. The type of experiment is split in these 4 tags: knowledge, benchmark, scaling, and validation. Of course, the point is this: trying to understand the life cycle of the experiment. Scaling is when you want to scale an experiment. So you add a benchmark, you analyze it, you compare the benchmark with new data. The experiment is successful, you want to scale. Validation, when you have benchmark, you have data, you want to understand if the experiment within doing a zoom out within a great picture, it works or not. For example, you tested the campaign to decrease the cost per lead. Now you want to know if the campaign on LinkedIn that you run work with your landing page, work with the email sequence for activation. And again, benchmark and knowledge are 2 tags that I use the most, honestly, because of course, benchmark is when you don't have a benchmark, so you have to test something for new. Because, for example, I tested programmatic advertising or Bing advertising, and we had not benchmark. So I tested and I say, okay, what I find is something that can work or not. It depends on the goal that I have. For the next time, if it is worthy, I will have benchmark. And of course, the other, if I have a benchmark, I want to compare the data because maybe I want to decrease the cost per lead. I want to test a new type of, for example, LinkedIn video ads against a single image. And that's it was an important part of the framework because it helped me a lot to cluster the experiment and having a clear picture. The part of prioritization was the classic ICE framework. So impact, confidence, and ease of the experiment. And based on the ICE rate, I prioritized the experiments. Of course, metrics connected. So I usually work with 2 metrics per each experiment. I think that having other metrics maybe can create a bit of confusion. You have 2 weeks, it's not a long time, you have to move real fast. So I prefer to have just 2 metrics. And of course, the key learnings to use and to create a playbook and to use for the future experiment.
And before we dive into more, even more in depth how that works, maybe you could share, because I'm not sure how knowledgeable people are about experimentation. I mean, maybe they are similar to my level, like beginner, very beginner, I would say. So ran a few A/B tests, no structure, or maybe tried to set up a structure, but it definitely wasn't something like you have. I think maybe we can add the image of a screenshot of your model framework that you've built and how you track the experiments, and people will see it's very, very sophisticated. And like you said, I guess you track ICE framework data, then you track also the type of experiment, like you said, benchmark, knowledge, validation, scaling. But I think for most people, it's much less like the start. Like you also mentioned, you start with the basics, right? And you expand from there. Just like for us all to get on the same level of knowledge to start with. Maybe we can start with by discussing which channels do you run experiments on typically, like just maybe like top 10 or top 5 channels, and then go from there. I'll ask you a few questions about that to get
Yeah,
the knowledge.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course, we can also share because I want to say that, as you know, because we
Yeah.
talked, this framework has a proper evolution, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm working on it, and I can also share with you the framework also for your network. It's not yeah. It's not a problem. We can share screenshot, whatever you think it's worthy or whatever your audience wants. And about the channels, if you want to talk about this, trying to give a couple of examples. Of course, I give you the statistic. The 71% of my experiments were based on the acquisition part. So I tested on acquisition channel. And I tested LinkedIn ads, Google ads, different, of course, type of advertising, both for LinkedIn and for Google. And we can go in deep. Programmatic advertising with the network of StatCadapt, and I tested Bing advertising. Of course, I also tested, probably this is more related to activation, email sequence, because we already worked with email, but we tested this sequence of 3 emails with maybe a complex automation. But we tested that thanks to this automation and this sequence of email that became 6 email, because there was the if for people who didn't receive or read the previous email. We increased the number of marketing qualified lead of the something like 40%.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was incredible. Honestly, it was one of the experiments I'm most proud of. The other experiment I'm really proud of are regarding Google Ads and LinkedIn Ads. Because for LinkedIn Ads and Google Ads, I had this really challenging goal in the beginning of the year. They were about decreasing the cost per lead, decreasing the cost per acquisition of the leads, and of course, increasing the return on investment. And until now, we are successful, and this is amazing. We tested a lot, literally a lot. Every sprint we test, okay, maybe video ads could work for awareness, for not for lead generation. Maybe the form in LinkedIn ads, it's okay, but I have to connect it with an email sequence. So also different experiment, and in this way I go through the validation part of the tag type of experiment validation, so I can connect different things. Google Ads, again, I tested a lot of keywords, a lot of landing pages, I made experiments.
Wow.
Yeah, tell me what you prefer, and we can go in deep. There are no secrets, so
Yeah.
we can
Amazing.
discover everything.
That's perfect. Well, I think what has always been a challenge for me with experimentation, or like also A/B testing or testing Facebook ads, Google ads, is you can only test one variable at a time, right? And it also takes time to see results. Like maybe we can speak more about, or you can speak more, share your thoughts about that. But for example, with Google Ads, you can, test the headline, you can test the description of the ad,
Yeah.
you can test the visual. And also something that would interest me is how long do you run the tests for? And when do you know you're done testing, basically?
Okay. Yeah. I agree with you. Testing one variables per time, it's something that I prefer. But I think it's not a rule, honestly. Sometimes you can test different things. You can do multi-variable test. I think that the great point, the game changer, is in this case for acquisition channel, the volume of traffic, because we need to search for the statistic validity. Because if the experiment, it is not, yeah, we have nothing. I think the worst scenario is if we base next step on nothing. So this really matters. So I read this interesting book that I suggest to everyone interested in experimentation and in growth, that it is Matt Lerner growth levers. And so I said, if for a business we have to study the customer journey to find the bottlenecks, to find the right growth levers, even if I'm working on the acquisition channel, it is the same. I have just to do a zoom in. So I started on this to find the variables, because I said, okay, I know that Google Ads, from the data that I have from the CRM, from the analytics like GA4 and from Google Ads, I know that it works. Now I want to understand what I can improve. For example, clarity was great because I had qualitative data from it and analyzed that landing pages wouldn't work great. From quantitative data of Google Ads, I knew that, again, the quality score was not so high. So I said, okay, we need to test something here. And so we tested before keywords, then we tested the landing pages itself, the pop-up, we tested different things. To answer to your second question, I said, okay, we work with sprints of 2 weeks. So for me, it's important to move faster because we need to test many things faster than the others, than the market, than the competitor. And I said, okay, I had in this case to put high volume of traffic in these ads and see what happens. I know that if I do not reach this type of volume, the experiment, it could be successful or not, but it doesn't matter. This is the real game changer. And honestly, if I had not been able to reach this volume, probably the experiment would have run for more than 2 weeks, because this was my priority.
Okay.
So choose variables, how study your website, study your customers, study your CRM, your analytics, qualitative and quantitative both. Then how much time? It depends. It depends on your volume. Your goal, it is, because we need to be agnostic. This is the base of a growth scientist. I like this definition, sorry, but I have to say it.
Growth scientist.
I love it. And I laugh when I say it. Anyway, the real goal, it is not being successful or not. Of course, it is important to be successful because we need to prove our work to our stakeholders. It's fundamental. I don't want to be a hypocrite. But at the same time, we have to search for clear data. So statistical validity is the real goal. And time and volume of traffic. If I have enough volume, I don't need a long time. If I don't have enough volume, I need time, or I have to cancel the experiment.
Which would be sad, but it happens in life,
Yeah,
right?
no, it happens.
Do you maybe have, like, for those who are not knowledgeable about this, maybe as much, do you have like concrete numbers of like what is maybe a good target for like a 2-week experiment? What is like the volume that you need to achieve, the search traffic or the ad traffic?
I think it depends. It depends because, of course, it depends on the channel, on the budget you have, and usually I also consider the organic traffic that we have, for example, for Google Ads, because I know that we work in a niche. I cannot hope for a traffic like Coca-Cola's website. So of course I try to measure exactly what is our organic traffic, the traffic for those keywords, and I say, okay, if I reach, for example, for a sprint of 2 weeks in Google Ads, 3,000, 4,000 of impression in 2 weeks, it's good for me, because I know that I have those amount of researches per month connected to the keywords. I know that we have that amount of monthly organic visit that are thousands. So 3,000, 4,000, even 5,000, nearly the 50% of the organic traffic is okay for me.
Okay. Yeah.
If I go for LinkedIn ads, for example, it's different. In that case, I measure different. Of course, in LinkedIn ads, it depends on the type of campaign because, as you know, in LinkedIn ads, you can go for website visit, but now LinkedIn prefers to work within LinkedIn itself. So usually, when I set the audience, I see the audience. For example, assume that we have 10,000 people within the audience. I try to reach at least the 80% in this case. I'm satisfied just in that case because it's different. It is not connected to our website. It is connected to the LinkedIn itself that works in a different way. In Bing, for example, again, was different because analyzing our customer base, Bing had not a great volume. So my experiment was okay, not successful or not unsuccessful, just okay if I reached 1,000, 1,500 of impression.
Yeah, because you can still conclude some things, I mean, with maybe less certainty, right? But it's still some data that you can analyze and learn from, right?
Yeah. I have to add, maybe this is something that you gain with the experience, but usually the campaign managers in general give you other data. For example, Google, in Google Ads, there is the percentage of search impression that it is interesting because you know that you reach, for example, the 50% of the impressions that you could reach. I know that impressions is a vanity metric most of the time, but in this case, it could work because you know that on 10,000 of people, you didn't reach the 100%. And this, of course, when you use different tools to understand if the experiment is valid or not, helps is another data. There are a lot of tools that you can look for in the website that help you to understand if the experiment worked or not.
Okay, super interesting. But moving on to a different channel because it's very relevant to me right now, and I'm sure also to a few people in the audience. Emails, because when testing, you mentioned testing email sequences, and my question would be, with an email sequence, how do you know which email was, like, if you test two email sequences, same amount of emails, right? But different content, obviously. Then how do you know which of the emails was the one that actually led to the one side winning over the other side? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, in
what
this case, I
element?
chose a metric. I chose a metric that helped me to understand if the option A won over the option B. In my case, was the click rate, and the second matrix was the number of marketing qualified lead. Because we have a system of lead qualification that when you clicked on our mail, automatically you are qualified. If you are an A1, A2, we have a system, a matrix. If you are okay, automatically you are a marketing qualified lead. This doesn't, yeah, this lead qualification system, it is not just if you click on the email. Of course, it tracks also your past action, because for us, marketing qualified lead it is not just if you click on an email. But when we speak about email, we speak also about activation. So probably it's a traffic that you already owned, and for this reason, we saw that it works.
But also what I meant with the email sequences, like you look at the total marketing qualified leads that you got from each sequence, and then you decide, right? I assume. But what about the individual emails? Because if it's a sequence, like maybe one of the emails then in every sequence is better than the rest of the emails, or it's more converting, or like, there are just so many different steps to it. You know what I mean? So kind of for me, it's kind of hard to tell, because what I'm doing right now is I'm going to set up a new email sequence, and I'm wondering, okay, how do I know which of the emails was it that actually made a difference?
Yeah, it's not easy because, of course, this is a complex part of the experimentation, because, of course, you're working. When you work with a single email, probably it's easier. But yeah, when we are within a sequence, the situation becomes complex. Also because you have different variables, different parameters. Honestly, in our case, our CRM and our email sender helped us a lot because we had this system, and we just say, okay, just send to the 50% of the entire audience, then the 50% of the 50%, so the 25, the version A, then the version B. Then we created an if, and we created another test, but we were able to track every time the system and the options. This honestly was not a basic experiment. So we tried this only after a couple of months because before of doing this type of test in a sequence, we tested in singular emails, we tested in different parts because we knew we needed also to know if the system was okay to track all of this information.
Yeah, totally. It's much more complex. Like anyone who tried also tracking like emails and clicks and adding that to your CRM and like, clearing up your pipeline in a CRM system and keeping it like not too crazy knows it's just hard. You just need to really find what works for you and your team. But moving on to your framework that you've developed, maybe you can share how you prioritized which growth experiments to try next, and also maybe connected to that, like how your framework you started with evolved to what it is now.
Yeah, this is the new version of the framework. The previous one was probably, if we compare it with this one, it was a mess. Because every line with this infinite growth experiments. And before, ice rate was the way I chose the experiments each sprint. So very easy. We have also the ice now, and impact confidence is points from 1 lowest to 5 the highest, and of course an average to say, okay, if I have a rate near the 5, I have my first priority, then the second one, then the third one. I try to fulfill all the possible spots within the sprint. I mean, resort in terms of resources, economics and not, of course, also the time. And this is what I did. Then, honestly, okay, we had a really great success because we achieved the goal in the first month of the year. So this was a great proof about what experimentation can do for you, I think. Because if you test again faster, if something doesn't work, okay, cut it. Go ahead, test again, track, learn, create a playbook. All these actions that I'm listing, I know that it seems a list, but it is something more. You can create an impact and you can reach your goal. But at a certain point, I said, okay, I think it's missing something. I'm sure that we need to reach something else. I studied a lot, but really a lot. Of course, Sean Ellis' book, Hacking Growth, was like, my favorite book. I studied from Italian growth expert, and I tried to understand how to reach the next step. I talked with a lot of people, and in Growth Mentor, I talked with this guy, John, that he helped me a lot, and he said, okay, but it's nice. But he said, in my opinion, you are missing the connection with your OKR. I mean, okay, you create the sprint. You create the first priority, the second one, blah, blah, blah. But what happens if something it's better in terms of ice rate, but it doesn't create any impact? Maybe it is even successful, the experiment, but have you created an impact? The answer is not. And this creates a difference. So for this reason, I did this. I created more or less the same structure, because as you can see, we have the type of testing. Of course, not the type of testing, but the ideation, planning, implementation. This is useful because if I want to connect it towards a project management tool, it's great. I have a start date, a due date, the name. I have the success metric 1, the secondary metric, the step, acquisition, activation, the type of test, the hypothesis, execution, result, what I learn, and what are the next steps. Of course, I know that column B, column F, and the column of the rate, now I'm going to explain them. Because I said, okay, I want to see everything related to my goals. In this case, big corporate, conversion rate, opportunity, deals. Okay, it's fine. These are my goals. They have a weight because I want to work quarterly for these goals. And I weighted them, of course. And it is not just a personal weight. This is the weight for the company, for your company, for each company. Because for each company, you have goals and they have different weights. This is normal. So I just wrote it. And I said, fine. Now I want to, of course, create the column F that it helps just to have a visualization of the type of goals. And then I said, okay, I want the ICE framework because it is useful if you have to create a prioritization of the small experiments. But for the bigger one, I need something else. So I create an average with the weight of the OKR, and I have my priority here, as you can see. In this way, here on the left, you can see that if I close here, I have just the most important experiment. And as you can see in the column O, P, and Q, it is not that this experiment with the priority rate higher are probably the one with more impact or with more confidence on this. But for me, doing an experiment related to opportunity is not as important as an experiment for the conversion rate. So in this way, the priority is the priority of the big experiment because it is the average of the ICE framework with the weight, with the impact of the OKR of the goal. Then I create, of course, the other experiment, the small step to achieve the big goal. And in this way, the ICE framework helps me to prioritize them. I hope I was clear.
Yeah, no, I think I understand. I like that it's a mix of the impact of the OKR and then the ICE framework. And then also you said that the sub goals, basically, they are more based on the, you are ranking them based on the ICE framework, right? Not the OKR then, because they're sub goals or sub experiments.
They are still impacted by OKR because in any case now the goals are too important. I need to create an impact, and so they are affected by the OKR. At the same time, probably they will have the same impact because we are within the major experiment. Another thing is that in this way, I'm still able to work with sprints of the week because otherwise with few experiments, of course, big experiment like Black Friday, Target, that vertical, I'm not able to work really fast because I'm not able to deal everything. So in this way, I say, okay, I have my impact, I have my weight, I have my priority. Now I know that I have to work on the conversion rate with using the Black Friday targeting something. Then I will create the small step, for example, LinkedIn ads, Google ads, that type of format. And in this way, the weight of the OKR is still present, but it is still present the highest rate. And in this way, they are combined. And I see that it works. Still now it works. I think that it will have another step in the future. It's near because it's important. Maybe not a framework in Google Sheet, but something different. But it will have for sure.
Okay. And in the priority column, do you have like a formula in there to calculate the priority score?
Yeah, sure. It's
column B.
It's everything automated
Okay.
because we have this simple formula that it is this n, so the cell in n multiply for the average of the for the S rate, that it is the average of O, P, and Q.
Okay, amazing. Wow, this is definitely the most comprehensive template I saw, or like the framework I saw ever. And I was looking for a few when I was setting up kind of initial A/B tests and stuff, just like looking what's out there. And I've never seen anything as comprehensive and as clear as this framework. So if you can share it with us, I think everyone would be super, super happy because it's really amazing.
I'm very happy to share this, and I hope that someone else will improve it because I think it's important.
Yes,
we are a community. It's important. This, I think. Another thing that I think it's helpful for the audience is this type of visualization, because really I try to work. I made those 91 experiments that it is a record for me at least. But split in quarter, because usually something changes in your objective, and creating the big goals, create an impact for the company and statistical validity. Then there is the successful rate, and then there is everything. But search for those two goals before. So create every time a sheet for a quarter, and then manage the experiment. Another thing, I worked with I say to you a lot of project management tool. I'm a great fan of Notion, as you, I know, and this is a great thing. But I know that based on the type of the company, you have different tools. I think that this, from what I tested, these frameworks, if you use Make or Zapier, works really well. If you need, you can connect it. I would say use the framework here, then automatically update your project management tool, because here you can change everything. You have everything within your eyes, and I think it's better from what I test on myself.
Yeah. I like that you can see really all the columns, on one, page. I think also in like Notion, a tool like Notion, you can connect them, but I think you would not see everything, because it just wouldn't fit, I think. So I think it's better to manage it in Google Sheets, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But
I'm developing a Notion template.
Ah.
I will keep you updated about the Notion template. I follow your suggestion about this.
Amazing.
But I want to create something that it is coherent with this. So very simple, because this maybe seems complex, but when you start, it is easy. And I want to create something accordingly. I don't want to create something that it is complex to do. Okay. So it requires time, but I'm on it.
Oh, I'm very excited to see it. I'm sure it will be amazing. Yeah, because there is no Notion template that is like good right now, from what I've seen, at least in for experimentation. But one question I have about this as well is, you have the budget for the quarter, right? For experimentation, just experimentation budget. And how do you track how much you're spending per experiment as well? I don't see it here. Maybe it's just it's very small.
No, because we, in our case at least, we work with Google Workspace. So for each meeting, I connect a Google Doc. And so in this way, I list the experiment, and this experiment has its proper page. And you can just tag and connect.
Okay, so tag and connect, so you can kind of keep the budget in check? Because like how do you make sure that you don't go over the budget or spend too little? Like that's kind of my question.
I have another interesting framework for this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I'm a planner
Amazing.
too. I have another framework for this. It's another Google Sheet, of course, through
my
which
God.
you track all your expenses. I think that the great point is that you do not just track, but you plan before the quarter all of your expenses.
Yeah.
I think that in this case, not all of the experiments are based on a budget, because, for example, email sequence for me, it's not a budget that I have to track with the experiment. So I didn't put here this part. But of course, for LinkedIn ads, for example, I created this ecosystem within which everything is connected. So for an experiment related to LinkedIn ads, you have its own page that it is connected to the LinkedIn budget page that I have in my folder of ads. And so you create a sort of, maybe it's not like that, but a sort of para system like Chago Fortes one.
Oh, yeah. Wow, I would love to see it too. So maybe we can have another meeting about the budgeting and how you plan the budget for experiments. Also very, very fascinating, very relevant as well for anyone who wants to run experiments, I think. I'm curious, what are the most common challenges you face when running experiments? Maybe like, top 3, if you have something from the top of your head.
The top 3 challenging experiments, you mean?
Like challenges you faced when running experiments from your life.
Well, I think that this framework is fine, but everything depends on the execution.
Yeah.
And the challenges that I faced were related to execution, because if you work with sprints, you have to respect them. And it's not always easy, because if you work within a team, maybe with a cross team, so people that come from different teams and maybe have different responsibilities, the pace, the rhythm of the task is a difficult thing, because you need to start immediately. Maybe you need to start tomorrow a LinkedIn ads, and today we have to work all together for the graphic, for the copy, for the landing pages, for maybe a check about the budget itself, for the audience creation. Usually when I work really, really close with a friend and a colleague that is the BDR manager. And this is very important, because every time we check, we decide for an experiment, we need to check, for example, the audience, because we as marketer, as growth expert, we need to see analytics about the customer base, about the prospect, and we need to talk with sales, with BDRs. For example, maybe in Italy, BDR and SDR are two different figures. Maybe in Europe, I know that in US they are not. Maybe also in Europe, it depends. Anyway, we have to talk with them, and difficulty, a challenge is the rhythm of this, because you need to talk with many people, but you need to start. You have to start tomorrow, but you needed to start yesterday.
Oh gosh.
This is a challenge, because you need to move faster. As Shonali says, if you do not move fast enough, it's a problem. It's not growth experimentation. It's just experimentation. But we work to look for rapid growth. This is the goal, as we say. Another challenge, honestly, that I found was, for a couple of experiments, find the other great goal that is finding the validity of the experiment before the successful rate or not. And not every time it's easy, and sometimes you have to understand the right time to cut the experiment. It happened. It's not easy. It's something that it's difficult to teach, or you can just narrate the story and hope that you create a hint for the next, because there is not a real rule. Sometimes this happens, and even in this way, talking with others is important for me. For example, I talk a lot of time with the marketing manager, that works with me, and she lead us within the marketing team. And well, it's not easy, but this is a great challenge, and you have to win this challenge, because if you don't cut that experiment, you waste your budget, you waste your time. That probably it's worse than your budget. Another challenge, just to cover those three you asked for, probably sometimes the capability to understand the connection between the experiment. Because if you have those goals, most of the time the C line that decides the goals looks for something coherent. They do not ask for revenue and I don't know for taking care of free time of the company. Probably your goals are all coherent, and you have to create. Most of the time, I saw that the experiments are connected, but it is not easy, because some other time it's difficult to see this connection, and it is difficult to see the impact and the consequence. It's difficult to prove the work you have done, and it's not easy. I'm talking with John about this, and also about other people I talk with, because it's not easy to find how to prove your work, how to prove the impact that you've done. This is a challenge, because this is a shit that if you are a technician, or if you are an executive or even a manager, you can appreciate. But for other stakeholders, it's different. These are just numbers, tags, columns, rows.
Yeah. So communicating the value of your work to like stakeholders, to management, not like direct managers, but like further up, higher up, I guess, right? Because Unggas is it's a larger company, right? It's like more of a scale up at this point, right?
Yeah, it's a scale up. We are more than 100 employees. We acquired a company in France a couple of months ago. So it's a different reality.
Yeah, so more people, more stakeholders, and more, people you have to communicate with and explain why your work matters. Basically, I think that's always a challenge.
I think also there is a benefit of this, because, for example, I didn't face a problem that many times I heard from others, that it is the problem related to backlog, because every time I was able to create a good communication with others, a good channel with others, and so most of the time automatically you receive experiments that you could run. Your work is to say, okay, they're worth or not, and create a priority list.
As you talk to a lot of marketers about experimentation, did you notice any, like, maybe top 3 mistakes that marketers make when running experiments and when talking to them, or just reading about it as well?
No, we talk about mistakes. We talk about a lot of mistakes most of the time that I made, because I prefer to talk about my mistake than things that I was successful at, because I don't learn anything. I prefer to say, okay, I made this mistake. Maybe someone else could say, okay, but maybe if you had tried this, something would have changed. I say, okay, great, this is a learning. So, for this reason, if you think about this conversation, I didn't focus on the success rate or on the unsuccess rate, because every time you learn something, in my opinion, it is not an unsuccess. Of course, again, I'm not an hypocrite. I know that we have to prove our job, our work. We have to be successful, because sometimes we have to create for an impact for the company. But if you learn, and the next time you do something different, maybe you will fail again, but at a certain point you will be right. And this is the work of this rapid experimentation framework, as Shonelli says. I don't remember who said this phrase, but I liked it. Companies pay us to fail, because the next time we don't fail in the same thing. and we
Yeah.
do something good. I know that for all the CEO, it will be terrible to her, and then apologies, but I think that in a certain sense it's true. We need to fail and talk about mistake.
Yeah. I like this mindset, and I think it's also good learning for anyone starting with experimentation or with also being in marketing. You fail, but then you learn, and then you fail again and you learn. I think that's a process that we have to go through as marketers, and yeah, I think that's definitely a very good mindset to have. But if you were to give someone advice who is just starting with experimentation, maybe, well, first of all, you mentioned not focusing too much on success rate, but more on, your learnings and maybe the impact also of your work. But then maybe also what channels are what is the easiest channel to start with? I mean, I'm sure it's all tricky, but for someone who hasn't really done any experimentation, maybe the company was too small to even do any experiments, and now they have some more, more time, maybe a team even for that. What is something you would start with?
Sure, with the own traffic. So email sequence with the own traffic. If you do not have budget, if it is too risky, if we speak about an early startup, if you have a traffic, work with it. A website, pop up, try with this newsletter, email sequence. Of course, before of doing any experiment, study your company, the existing demand or the not existing demand. Study your customer base. In a case of an early startup, the early customer profile, as Maya Voye says, and it is true. You have to study before, and then work with the own traffic. So email, perfect. Perfect channel to start from.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with us. It's been fascinating to learn more about experimentation. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I'm now more motivated than ever to start testing our email sequences and whatever I can with this framework. So yeah, I will share it with the audience, and I'm sure it will provide lots of value for them.
For any
It was a
question, if they
pleasure.
want, they can contact me. I'm open to talk with everyone. We can arrange any coffee and talk for about everything. Really, really.